Okay, you got me intrigued with War Games now.
I'm interested.
There's rumors going on with PW Insider and outlets saying that CM Punk could be the fifth man, brother, in the Bloodline War Games match. And the question mark is, okay, if this was to happen, how do you get there so quickly, have it make sense, and all of that? And I got two different ideas and possible outcomes for War Games, how they could do this thing. One that involves CM Punk, Seth Rollins, all that stuff, and the other one is not involving Punk. It's a mystery that we'll find out, but I am intrigued. Okay, if Punk does come in as the fifth man and it's not Seth Rollins, does it make sense on paper, number one? Well, yes, it does. The thing is like, Seth Rollins really shouldn't want to join the Bloodline, as he even said it in previous episode of Raw. He doesn't want to be involved. He's done, and he's probably mad that everybody else is getting involved and they shouldn't. Bronson Reed hooking up with the Bloodline, I really like it, because if you go back to Bronson Reed's character a little bit earlier into last year or the beginning of this year, time is crazy now, but Bronson Reed was like the hired mercenary, right? The Miz hired him to take people out, and that was kind of his gimmick for a little bit. Now he just destroys things, and he's just dummying everybody with tsunamis. I love it. So the fact that the Bloodline solo would bring in Bronson Reed to just dish out damage and become the fifth man for their team as like an enforcer type, really like it. And he fits. Bronson Reed really fits with the Bloodline. I really hope they can continue that whole thing, like a loose alliance when they need to. They all hook up together. I like it. And now on paper, it makes the most obvious total sense that Seth Rollins is the other guy in War Games, because Seth and Bronson Reed have had this feud. They had the match on Raw just last night when we recorded this, and fine. It makes sense that they would just say that Seth as a character would be like, I'm gonna go after Bronson Reed in War Games. I'm not done with him, and the Bloodline is getting involved in my business. I don't like it, so I'm going into War Games. I'm not helping you guys out. I don't care about you, Roman and Sammy and all this stuff, and Jay. That's your business. I am interested in getting to Bronson Reed and maybe getting some comeuppance on Solo Sikoa. That could be the total plan. They could just go in that direction, and you know what? Still be entertaining, still be fun, and there could be a possible little twist in the outcome there that we'll talk about in a bit. But let's say they just did that straight up. Fine, totally good, and it's logical. And Triple H likes his logic booking, but I wouldn't be surprised if he wanted to do a little bit of a twist here with CM Punk. So how do you do it? How do you make it make sense? Okay, you have Seth go through all of this and fully intend to be the fifth man in War Games. Go with that whole story arc. But what you do is you have Seth Rollins get destroyed by the Bloodline and Bronson Reed like at War Games, or the Raw right before the SmackDown right before War Games. Have Seth Rollins get absolutely decimated and taken out in an injury angle. Seth has been like in and out on TV a lot lately, and he's had this really good feud with Bronson Reed that I feel like they don't necessarily need another match. So if you have Seth taken out in storyline in an injury angle, you could then have CM Punk be the next guy in line. This is kind of a nice full circle moment because it was 1 year ago at Survivor Series when Punk made his return to WWE, and the place went crazy. You could have Punk be the fifth man on Team OG Bloodline, and the reason why is the entire nucleus of all of this, the wise man, Paul Heyman. Now on SmackDown, Roman tried to call his wise man, and the wise man's line, it ain't connected anymore. He's gone. We don't know why he's gone. We don't know why the phone didn't ring. Is it because The Rock is involved? Is it because he's been taken off and like he's just gonzo? Is it because that maybe Paul Heyman is mad at the Bloodline, at Roman specifically, for not coming to his aid, for not helping him out after all of the years of being his wise man? Roman Reigns never came back during that time to defend the honor of the wise man, nor did the rest of the Bloodline. Now you could do it that way, or you could just have it like Bloodline, new Bloodline, like wrecked his phone and changed his phone number with his telecommunications provider. That's like Solo's gotcha. But however you want to spin that, Paul Heyman in storyline would be the one to go to CM Punk and say, I need your help. Remember the promo that Punk did with Heyman in the ring right before, the week before, I believe, that Paul Heyman got decimated and powerbombed through the announce table where he was written off TV this entire time. He had that moment in the ring, which I love that promo, that whole segment with Punk and Heyman pleading with Punk, take me with you, because he was afraid of the Bloodline. and Punk coming to his aid and kind of protecting Paul Heyman. It was such a good moment, and I can see them using that as a little bit of a story nugget to justify why Punk would be in the War Games match. Punk coming to the aid and being the one to step up and defend his advocate. He's the first Paul Heyman guy before Roman Reigns. And Roman never apologized or came to the aid of Paul Heyman when he was powerbombed through the table. And so Punk can go in there as kind of the cowboy, the outlaw type, and defending Paul Heyman. You could have it where Paul Heyman comes out on the stage and you get, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Paul Heyman. And instead of acknowledging the tribal chief, Paul Heyman says, and I am the advocate for this man. The original Paul Heyman guy, CM Punk. Punk's music hits, the place explodes, but you get like the confusion and the concern on Roman's face. Like, why did he bring out Punk? Why isn't he with me? And that can play into more of their story of Roman and Paul Heyman trying to kind of get back together and get on the same page. Because remember, up to this point with War Games and Roman's return, Roman hasn't like apologized to anybody. Roman is still like dicking people around. They're all doing his bidding still. And Jay has been kind of the only one who's been like, hey, we're not doing stuff like for you. We're all on the same level, despite Roman gets his own chair and the three of them stand behind Roman Reigns. So it still kind of feels like Roman's in charge. But Roman Reigns still has things to apologize for and own up to. And Paul Heyman is one of those people, one of those things. He never helped him. He never saved him from the bloodline. But Punk could be that guy. Now you have the War Games match. You have Punk come in and he just lends a hand and he just starts dummying people. You get a lot of good tension between Roman and Punk, and you got Paul Heyman ringside looking on. Now, what would you do with Punk after all of that? Now you're thinking, okay, is Punk now like cemented in the Bloodline saga and all of that? Really don't think so, because what they could do, they could blend the stories. You could have Paul Heyman and Punk on Raw, or you can make it a one-off thing. And you can easily have Punk come out on Monday Night Raw to explain it and just say, why did I do that? I did it for Paul Heyman. He asked for my help. I'm a Paul Heyman guy, and he wanted my help originally. And you call back to SmackDown when he needed his help. I helped a friend, and that's that. That then explains Punk's whole reasoning, and then you can have Paul Heyman and Roman deal with their issues after the fallout of War Games, and that's very compelling. Instead of just having Paul Heyman maybe show up at War Games and introduce the OG Bloodline. That's a cool moment and all, and we all pop if we just see Paul Heyman on the stage and he acknowledges Roman Reigns and all of that, and he's back, the whole group is back together. But we can't get there because Paul Heyman ain't answering the phone. We don't know why. So that could be option one. The option two with CM Punk specifically at Survivor Series is none of that happens, and you still do Seth, and it's still the basic story of Seth Rollins is in War Games, he is the fifth man, and it all goes normal. What you do with CM Punk, if he is going to show up at War Games, is you have him confront Gunther at the end of the Gunther-Damian Priest match. Gunther, I assume, is going to retain that title. And you could have Gunther beat Damian Priest, beat him to a pulp, get him out of the ring. Gunther cuts a promo at the end of the match and just says, I'm the biggest world heavyweight champion, no one can stop me. And then Punk's music hits and you get a stare down between Punk and Gunther in the ring to set up a future match, probably for Saturday night's main event. Now, let's circle back just for a second here because I forgot one thing. With Seth Rollins being taken out of that match and you insert CM Punk in there and the Paul Heyman shenanigans and everything. Okay, if you do that, you have now set the stage for Punk versus Rollins. You still do the thing on Raw, like I said, where Punk just says, hey, I'm a Paul Heyman guy and that's why I helped him. But because Rollins got taken out, you have Rollins show up weeks later and confront CM Punk. And that gives Seth Rollins his motivation to be more heelish and lean into that side of him to then go up against CM Punk to set the table for their eventual match at WrestleMania. And the story there is, yes, Seth got taken out, Punk inserted himself, but that could drive Seth Rollins crazy. That Punk is always the guy taking his spotlight. Punk got his spot. CM Punk getting involved in his business. Look at Survivor Series last year when Punk came out at the end and how they played up Seth Rollins losing his mind. You can kind of do similar things with Seth losing it, that he got injured, he got taken out, he's paying the consequences, but meanwhile CM Punk is getting all the adulation and everything because he inserted himself into someone else's business. And Punk could say, I don't see it that way, and then off you go. Now the other thing, if you're not gonna do Punk, and you stick with original Seth Rollins in the match, all of that goes down. What I could see happening post-match is okay, do you have regular original Bloodline win, or do you have new Bloodline win? I kind of feel that it's Roman Reigns, so you can't bet against Roman, but I do feel that new Bloodline kind of needs a win. Now, they did get the Crown Jewel win, so that does tell me that, okay, original Bloodline are going to win this thing, but it's the post-match. What I can see totally working is you have another moment of the final boss. Both teams are going to be just destroyed, tired, exhausted, and you could have Roman Reigns in there with the original Bloodline, and they all raise their hands. And you could have Paul Heyman come out to the ramp, do his shtick, say, "My name is Paul Heyman," turn to Roman Reigns, and everyone's like, "Hey, it's Paul, he's back." And then everyone's going to be happy that Paul Heyman is there. And Paul Heyman turns and says, "And I am the wise man," to the final boss, The Rock. Rock comes out, stands side by side with Paul Heyman. But it's not that Paul has turned on Roman. It's that Paul is forced into this role with the final boss. The Rock makes him be his wise man. Just like Solo made Paul Heyman be his wise man until enough was enough, and they powerbombed him. It can explain why the phone is dead. The Rock has taken over everything on Paul Heyman's behalf. Paul Heyman can't do anything. He's trapped. And he's locked in with the final boss. And he's forced there. That gets to me, that gets very compelling, very interesting for storytelling, that The Rock is holding all of this power. You can still keep original Bloodline going because that is still going to be a thing. It can scare Roman Reigns, and he's got to figure out now, how do I get Paul Heyman back? How do I get Paul Heyman out of the clutches of the Bloodline and the final boss? Because The Rock isn't going to be there every single week. And if you bring Paul Heyman back as the reluctant wise man to the final boss, I think you could play with a lot of elements there. Again, we saw that a little bit with Paul being forced to be acknowledging Solo Sikoa, but I think you add a new layer and dimension when it's The Rock and Paul Heyman having to answer to The Rock. I personally would really like to see that. I think Punk is a good pop and a good moment, and intrigue with Paul Heyman then having to reunite with Roman Reigns down the road. But I fully expect The Rock to be there. It is a giant moment in the story of the Bloodline and really does start setting the table for WrestleMania. But where do you stand? Is Punk coming back? Is Seth Rollins out? Is Paul Heyman coming back? Where's the final boss? If you want to talk more about the final boss and WrestleMania and the potential options for the main event, click this video right here, because we're talking Cody, Roman, Rock, and what are the different options they could do for WrestleMania 41. Have a great day. See ya.